imagine AI really being your cousin's friend from Europe who somehow arrived in the US. And the more you kind of walk around the city, the smarter he becomes. And he comes up with pretty good responses. And you actually start to kind of like him.
Welcome to Same But Tech, a podcast where we explain the most talked about tech buzzwords, one analogy at a time. I'm Mahan, and today is all about artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, or AI, is a broad term that encompasses technology or computers that can think like humans.
There is a vehicle on your left. Your Netflix queue has 553 shows.
The goal of creating artificial intelligence is to build systems that can solve problems or perform tasks on their very own. Now, we've all heard about AI for decades, usually in science fiction books and movies. But it's real. AI is already pretty common in our daily lives. For example, AI is the magic behind Netflix's recommendation engine. AI is what enables Amazon's Alexa to act on your commands. AI is behind the Google Map directions in your car. In this episode, we learn about how AI takes in inputs, it thinks about them, and then really, it just makes guesses. Your feedback on if that guess was good or if that guess was bad is typically how that AI will improve.
I think you should imagine that your cousin's friend from Europe just arrived in the US and he barely knows you, but I think he's pretty smart. And you ask him a set of questions. What movie should I see? What have you seen? And he comes up with pretty good responses. He's perhaps even your friend now.
That's Dennis Mortensen, an expert in artificial intelligence.
And the more we talk and the more I give him high fives for what an awesome recommendation, the better he gets to know me. But not know me as my mom would know me, if we, again, continue in this analogy, but just know me based on what I've told him, the kind of thumbs up, the thumbs down. I think that version of that 21-year-old friend from Europe is perhaps some analogy of AI.
Although not at all what I expected, that's actually a pretty good analogy for AI. The idea behind that analogy is that an AI is like a friend of a friend who knows a bit about you, and she can give some recommendations. But when you start providing feedback, even a simple thumbs up or thumbs down, she learns. And then she gives better recommendations the next time around. Dennis knows a thing or two about AI. He's the founder and CEO of x.ai, a tech company that uses intelligent assistants to help manage your calendar. Have you ever received an email with someone asking a mysterious person named Amy to help schedule something?
Shall we get something on your calendar?
Well, turns out Amy is not real. Well, she's real. But she's not a human. Amy is an AI powered by Dennis's company, and she's pretty convincing.
Sometimes you kind of see people asking Amy out for drinks, and the geek inside of me took some joy in that.
So how does Amy work? How does an AI help schedule appointments? According to Dennis, AIs like Amy sort of just make educated guesses.
It's really just a bag of predictions, and that those very predictions are not deterministic, meaning that you can ask for something on Monday and you can ask for the same thing on Thursday, but given the world have changed, the answer on Thursday might actually not be the same.
Hold up. Did you catch that? This is a huge point. AI systems make decisions based on the information and learnings available in that exact moment. When information changes, so does the AI's outcome or decision. Let's put it another way. Although AIs can be based on rules or algorithms, they can also be completely organic, constantly learning and adapting their decisions based on the information at hand. Let's use Dennis's AI, Amy, as an example.
Your Wednesday is Jan.
Your calendar is always in flux.
But you have time Thursday.
So Amy needs to adapt to changing information to decide when or when not to schedule a meeting.
Move that call to 10 a.m.
These agents, they take objectives, which is, I would like to see a movie. Or in the case of Amy at x.ai, I would like to meet up with Lee first week of September when he's back in Manhattan for half an hour at my office. There's multiple true outcomes to that for where whenever he's here, any day within that spectrum that fits my preferences for the constraints I just said, such as half an hour in my office, are all good. And Amy needs to understand...
What Dennis is saying is that AIs need to consider a lot when answering your request. I ask Amy to schedule a 30-minute meeting. But how does she know where or when? Well, one way she figures it out is by learning from past experiences. How cool is that? These systems can actually learn and evolve. Amy realizes that I prefer back-to-back meetings. I like to meet at the coffee shop, and I usually block my calendar for all of Friday afternoon. Ultimately, she uses that info to make an educated guess.
I think everybody would be better off if they understood that any one of these systems are really just providing you prediction, not truth, but predictions for what they think is the right thing to do at this moment.
Ooh, okay. I think we have another analogy. AI is like a fortune teller.
Yes, if we didn't all have this awkward relationship with some fortune teller in the East Village. So I'm not sure I'm immediately signing on to that moniker because I've seen her. But I see where you're coming from. But some slightly more sober version of that fortune teller in the East Village, I could sign off on that.
Yeah, you should sign off on that. That was a pretty good analogy. Anyways, it almost feels like an AI is limitless. Like eventually each AI will be able to do anything and everything. But as I found out, that's not necessarily what makes a good AI.
I think one definition could be independent of how strong it is, that it does the very job that you imagined it would do. So let's take a really stupid bot, which I like, by the way. So Citibank deployed this little mini agent that can really only do two things. They'll send me a text message. It will ask me, did you buy that bagel in Singapore, Dennis? You can reply back 1 for yes, 2 for no. I know exactly why they send it, what they're asking me, and how to respond. And it does exactly that, not block my card when I need it in Singapore. So that is the foundation, I think, for a good agent. If you ask it to do something, you should not be in doubt about what is about to happen or the outcome.
This is interesting. Amy, the virtual assistant from Dennis's company, helps you manage your calendar. What is actually a pretty complicated task. On the other hand, that bot from Citibank, it verifies suspicious purchases. A somewhat more simple task. Now, before, I thought AIs might be limitless. Like they could do a bunch of different things. But as Dennis explained, a good AI actually only has to do a few things, even just one thing. But it has to do it really well. And that's all good. But if AIs are all about automating discrete tasks, why are people always talking about how they will completely change our future?
And if we kind of take that one step further, if this is that version of the future that we're going to live in, that also suggests that the next job interview that somebody will have in 8 years from now will not just be one for where you provide your typical CV, show the fancy college that you went to, give them the kind of 8 years of experience that you have. You'll also tell a story about, it's not just me that you hire. It is me and 11 agents that I've been training over the last 5 years. They're machine agents.
Wait, what?
And it would be almost eccentric if you just walk into a job interview and suggest, nah, it's just me and my education, and that's what you get. And people will look at you and say, that's sweet a little old school, perhaps not what we're looking for. I'm looking for somebody who spent years on end and will come armed with a whole host of agents.
Okay, that's super cool. This idea of training a bunch of bots to become your tools. When you read about AI, you usually hear a lot about artificial intelligence, automation, and robots taking our jobs. Pretty doom and gloom stuff.
A new report predicts 800 million people could be without work in the future as robots start to take over the workforce.
And that's why I love the way Dennis thinks about it. It's not that AIs are taking our jobs. It's that AIs will become part of our own personal workforce.
There's certainly no prior data that suggests the future will be one for where you and me, having closed our eyes for 2 weeks, will see 20, 30 million unemployed Americans due to automation. I'm not saying that we will not see a shakeup or that things will be rosy come tomorrow and forever thereafter. I'm just optimistic that once this is being injected, what we're seeing is actually not whole jobs disappearing. What we're seeing are typically really sad chores that many of us don't even want to do to begin with disappear so that we can finally end up doing what we were hired to do. Don't tell me that anybody will come back honestly and say, you know what I really like? I like to sit at home at 11 p.m. in my underwear on a Friday night and do email ping pong trying to set up a meeting next Wednesday at 1. No, you don't. You'd rather just be without that. But you do it because that is the only way you can actually do your job.
To be perfectly honest, I hate chores. Chores are literally the worst. Bring on the AIs. I'm ready.
About 2 years ago, I started a company called Atrium, which is a corporate law firm for startups that's technology enabled.
That's our good friend, Justin Kahn.
I'm a serial entrepreneur and investor here in Silicon Valley. I've been here for about 15 years, starting a bunch of companies. Most of them were horrible failures, and we have one pretty good success, which was called Twitch.
Justin is being modest. The company he co-founded, Twitch, is a live streaming site that Amazon acquired for nearly $1 billion. Justin was also a partner at Y Combinator, the world's top startup accelerator, before founding Atrium. When we spoke about artificial intelligence, Justin talked a lot about machine learning, or ML. You've probably heard of it.
I feel like AI is kind of this general catch-all for a bunch of techniques, and really what we're doing is just creating machine learning models.
Does that make sense? AI is the broader concept of computers mimicking human abilities or carrying out tasks. Machine learning is a subset of AI, based on the concept that machines can be trained to learn for themselves, based on whatever data or inputs they have.
Machine learning is like a human brain that's been trained to do only one thing. You're basically creating a model that takes in a bunch of inputs and then maps them to some conclusion.
You hear this analogy a lot. Machine learning is like a human brain. The reason this analogy works is because, like human brains, or even better, infant brains, machine learning models consider the inputs they receive to start to figure things out. The difference is that a human brain is constantly learning from new inputs. What we see, what we hear, what we feel. A machine learning model only has access to a specific data set that a human provided.
Well, that's a great point, because in a ML model, we, the people who are providing the data and deciding what factors should be considered are deciding the inputs, right? So a human being is like gathering constantly new inputs from its environment all the time. And in this case, you're saying, here's what the training data is, right? Here's the data of labeled images of cars so that you can build an ML model that detects cars from images, right? And so there's a lot more intentionality around what data you are exposing to the model.
Did that make sense? Justin is giving an example of machine learning, where you teach a computer to recognize a car. To do that, you would upload a bunch of car photos and label them cars. Eventually, the computer will start to learn what a car is by similarities in the images. It teaches itself that a car has 4 wheels, 2 side mirrors, a hood, and a trunk. So the next time you show the computer a picture of your Chihuahua, the computer knows to say, "Nah, dude, that is not a car." They use a ton of similar machine learning at Justin's company, Atrium. They build models that know how to search, find, collect, and organize data so that it becomes more searchable and sortable.
Yeah, that was a much better explanation. You should work at Atrium.
Justin, you couldn't afford me.
So an example of this that we do with ML is like we train models to identify types of corporate records and extract structured data from those records. That's interesting because that's work that's often done by human beings today, highly trained lawyers and paralegals, but is really rote work and can be done by a machine learning model.
This concept that we can build machine learning models to do specific jobs is sort of what scares people about the future of employment. That said, rest easy. Atrium isn't coming to replace you. They're just coming to make your job a little more efficient.
It's almost like how the Amazon warehouses run, like they have all this operational efficiency and process and kind of institutional knowledge on how to make a warehouse like super efficient.
But efficiency alone won't replace people. Believe it or not, people still like people.
Human beings really value having experts who are there, who can, draw on their wealth of expertise to advise them through difficult situations. And I think that will always be the case. No machine learning model can do that.
All right. There's your primer on artificial intelligence. Now, let's look into the future. What's up with AI in 50 years? So far, we talked about vertical AIs, or AIs that are good at completing a particular job or task, like managing a calendar or recommending movies. In the future, Dennis and Justin expect to see a horizontal AI, like a Queen Beyonce AI. This AI will manage all of our vertical worker bee AIs.
I think there may be some master computer that or master AI that controls everything.
Exactly. And I think one way to think about it is that we're probably all going to end up being married to some primary enabler AI. Let's just call it Siri for the fun of it.
You are out of milk.
Traffic is bad ahead.
It's kind of like Alexa, I guess, but the really smart Alexa where or like the computer in Star Trek.
Engaging warp drive.
Right, where you can just kind of ask it anything. It controls like all the smart devices, which is now, probably everything in your house and everything in every city, and kind of just is a constant companion to humanity where, it kind of does everything for you.
I mean, that future doesn't feel terribly far away. In fact, it feels like we're already on that path. We have our AirPods always in our ears and Siri ready at our fingertips.
Go no further than my own household, where my daughters will walk around with those AirPods, them not really being on. There's no music, there's no YouTube video, there's no conversation with a buddy of theirs. They're just in. We might actually again be on the verge of questions being more valuable than answers. So right now, most people get paid for answers, and very few people get paid for questions.
That's crazy. Not answers, but questions will be the most valuable currency. And at what point does that AI go from your AirPods to a chip in your brain, where you're not even asking questions out loud anymore? You're actually just thinking of them.
So I think it may be the case that in 50 years, we'll have created a brain-computer interface, like a BCI. You'll just be able to think to it and ask questions with your thoughts.
As it turns out, Elon Musk and Facebook are both already working on brain-computer interfaces. This all sounds far out, but maybe it's not. So, what is artificial intelligence? Well, it's a system that interprets external data, it learns from it, and it uses that learning to achieve pretty specific goals. It's sort of like AI is a fortune teller. It's like your cousin's friend from Europe. It's like a human brain that's trained to do one thing. Looking into the future, we can imagine each of us having a portfolio of AIs. You can even imagine having one AI that controls all of your other AIs. All I know is I cannot wait for that future, and I'm excited that I understand it a little bit better. Thank you to our guests, Dennis Mortensen of x.ai and Justin Kahn of Atrium. Today's episode was written and hosted by me, Mahan Zanuzzi, produced by Corinne Javier and Lee Schneider, executive produced by Steph Wolf. You can find more Same Same on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your ear candy. Thanks for listening. Spread love.
This episode was brought to you in part by BCG Digital Ventures. BCGDV builds revolutionary new startups with the world's most influential corporations. Learn more from their portfolio and current vacancies at bcgdv.com.
How many years until we have Westworld?
There's 2 versions of Westworld, which is awesome, by the way. And I grew up on the original, and I've been waiting for the series for decades on end. The software version, I think, will arrive a whole lot sooner, simply because we haven't yet really figured out robotics to the degree that we figured out software. So VR, which we every 15 years think is just about to arrive, will arrive at some point in the not too distant future. And then you and me will meet up in Westworld. Now, step 2 to that, when do we actually travel to Indiana and meet up in the real version? I hope it's going to be in my lifetime. I really hope it will. I'm not sure it will.
But we'll get there.
I can't see it.